It's true, not everything that Disney does is a slam dunk, and some projects have been a complete flop. But even though things went totally wrong, we ended up with some pretty amazing things. So today we're going to talk about what has come out of some of Disney's most impressive failures. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. Now, a lot of what we love about Disney's parks and products today can be traced back directly to projects that are considered failures. Disneyland was a total disaster on opening day, and Disney Cruise Line started out as a floating theme park, but boy, are we glad that those projects sort of failed. You're gonna see why. Number one, let's talk about the original California Adventure. The original Disney California Adventure Park was developed during a tough time in Disney history. Euro Disney was widely regarded as a terrible move, and the sudden death of Disney president Frank Wells meant morale was low among Imagineers and budgets were cut dramatically. The entire concept of DCA came out of brainstorming sessions based on creating a whole new gate, as they call it, which is a theme park basically, but doing it on a budget. The idea that Disney would build an entire park themed after California inside of real California shows that maybe Disney was a little removed from the reality and the desires of their guests. The park was full of a lot of edutainment, a la Epcot, that included a how-to on tortilla making, that was actually really cool, and wine grape growing, the latter of which was kind of novelty when placed next to the dry Disneyland park, but neither screams a fun day at a theme park necessarily. The rides were also not the best Disney has created. Superstar Limo was conceived of as a very different ride, a paparazzi chase that had to be slowed down and reimagined after the death of Princess Diana. This ride was so creepy and weirdly off-brand for Disney that it has developed a cult following because people can't seem to wrap their brains around the fact that it existed, even those of us who rode it. Now, something that's important to note came out of California Adventure is Soarin'. We got Soarin' over California in that original DCA park, and it's now one of the top rides in Epcot as well as several other parks around the world. Now, because of the tight budget, Imagineers took matters into their own hands on their own time because they cared about making something good happen in a new park. Mark Sumner famously invented the ride system for Soarin' by building a model of it out of his family's old erector set on Thanksgiving Day. Now, why is this kind of a failure? Well, Disney California Adventure never received the acclaim and love from Disney fans like other parks have. There wasn't anything spectacular about the park, and a lot of the rides just didn't appeal to park goers. Eventually, things would get reworked. Superstar Limo became the Monsters, Inc. ride we have today, and now we have Cars Land, Pixar Pier, and soon Avengers Campus, which are all much more exciting than a mishmash of low-budget California-themed rides and theming. The park is no longer themed just around California, remember. Now we have some of the biggest Disney-owned franchises, which appeal to a lot more folks. All right, let's talk about this failure, the SS Disney. You don't even know what that is, right? Right. In the early 90s, Disney was getting real out of the box in their thinking, including developing the concept for the SS Disney, which would be a floating theme park. The Imagineering team spent 9 months working out the feasibility of loading up classic Disney rides onto a ship previously used for hauling oil. The design was actually incredible, with gigantic glass domes covering the center of the ship, Fantasyland rides like the Teacups and Carousel, and Tomorrowland rides like Space Mountain. Even It's a Small World was reworked to be an Omnimover attraction to avoid the logistics of putting a boat ride on a boat. In total, there would have been about 16 to 18 rides and 6 restaurants on board for guests to enjoy throughout the day. After Frank Wells' death, however, corporate decided to go with a safer and easier bet, a cruise ship. The logistics of putting that many rides onto a floating vessel that would only have day guests would have been a wildly impressive feat. And there's pretty much no doubt it would have been a hit. Disney theme park floating up into a city near you, who wouldn't love that? It was just too much of a risk when Disney was dealing with budget cuts and a sudden loss of leadership. Things may not have panned out with the SS Disney, but we do have Disney Cruise Line now as a sort of long-term result, because we had that big red boat in the middle. And remember, Disney Cruise Line isn't your typical cruise. There's unique entertainment and activities along with a level of service you just won't find on other cruise lines. We can thank the original SS Disney concept for that. All right, let's talk about Disneyland, the elephant in the room, right? So before Disneyland opened, people were calling it Walt's folly, and nearly everyone expected him to fail. And day one was not too promising, to be honest. Opening day of Disneyland did not go well. The cement was still wet, rides weren't quite ready, which is not totally unexpected when you only give your construction team a year and 1 day to get everything finished. Construction teams were literally finishing things up right up to the deadline of the live televised opening of the park. Peter Pan's Flight and Dumbo were both closed because they weren't ready, and Tomorrowland was not finished. The canal boats had so many weeds with not enough time to pull them, so Imagineers made up Latin names and placed signs beside them instead. The Mark Twain riverboat almost sank. The asphalt was literally melting into people's shoes. It was a mess, and that's not even all that happened. About 10,000 people snuck in, either with fake tickets or climbing a ladder and scaling the fences. The day was referred to as Black Sunday. Disney got a crash course in what works and what doesn't work when it comes to theme parks. Some rides were discontinued, others were updated to accommodate real crowds. This led to more innovations in ride systems and crowd management that would help Disney's future parks become much more successful. Even after that disastrous opening day, though, people were still flocking to Disneyland, which meant that previously empty Anaheim filled up with motels and restaurants, which crowded in on the magic of the park. When planning out Disney World, Walt took all of that into consideration and purchased 27,000 acres in Central Florida to create an oasis separate from the real world, and they made sure the rides were ready for opening day this time around. But that's why there's so much space around Disney World, that Disney owns all of that land and won't allow anything to be built on it, is because Walt was frustrated that Disneyland basically got crowded in by all of these hotels, motels, and restaurants that were built to basically accommodate all of the crowds. So if you ever wondered why you have to actually take a boat or a train to get to Walt's Magic Kingdom in Disney World, that's why. And honestly, that's not so bad a thing. If Disney World is a place to escape and to be part of a fantasy world, you don't really want to look out of the monorail and see a 7-Eleven. All right, Euro Disney. We've already mentioned Euro Disney as one of the biggest failures in recent Disney history that had lasting impacts on other Disney projects. The park opened on April 12, 1992, and after the successful opening of Tokyo Disneyland in 1983, Disney was sure this new overseas park, the first to be fully owned and operated by the Disney company outside the US, would be a success as well, but they were wrong. Critics were quick to proclaim the Americanized theme park a future disaster, and farmers protested the location and construction. It was called a cultural Chernobyl. The park came in $1.8 million over budget, and 25% of the workforce had resigned within a month, citing poor working conditions, and an economic recession meant the park was losing money, and many feared it would go bankrupt. Now, Disney made a lot of mistakes with Euro Disney, mainly by ignoring the cultural differences and trying to reproduce an American Disney park in another country. Things did eventually start to turn around for Euro Disney, which officially became Disneyland Paris in 1994, and by 2005 it was the most visited tourist destination in Europe. This is after Disney started to listen to their European market and change gears for what different audiences wanted to see. So, what did we get out of this? The Disney company learned valuable lessons when it comes to opening other overseas parks. Disney's Shanghai and Hong Kong parks were created with the country's governments to ensure there weren't the same missteps when it comes to working conditions and cultural approval. Just goes to show, failure is just an opportunity for learning. Remember that, kids. Now, the next time we're glad that Disney failed, failure to read contracts. So we all know Walt lost his first character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, due to a contract dispute stemming from not reading the fine print and going over every little detail in those contracts. Walt Disney and UB Iwerks created the character Oswald the Lucky Rabbit in 1927, and it was super popular. In 1928, Disney went to negotiate his contract with his distributor, only to be completely cut out of the project and lose most of his staff to the project's backer, Universal. Walt could either abandon his own studio and go work for Universal, or abandon his hit character and try to start over. He chose to start over, which meant the beginnings of the Walt Disney Company we know today. Walt lost his first massively successful character, which then led to the development of Mickey Mouse, who is now synonymous with the Disney Company. We're not saying a mouse is any better than a rabbit, but it sure taught Walt and the company to read contracts a little more carefully. And we got pretty much everything we know of the Walt Disney Company out of this situation. Even now, Disney is dealing with complicated contracts between Universal and the Disney-owned IP. Despite owning Marvel Studios, Disney does not own the rights to Marvel in their theme parks. A complicated contract grants Universal the rights to the Avengers, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and dozens of other Marvel characters, but only east of the Mississippi, though Disney still can't use Marvel branding for promotion on either coast. The big loophole here is Guardians of the Galaxy. They're not already claimed by Universal's Orlando theme parks, despite their proximity to the Avengers, so it's fair game for Disney to build a Guardians of the Galaxy coaster in Epcot. And the West Coast Avengers campus is exempt from this bizarrely specific contract, so soon you will see Spider-Man and Disney California Adventure. Oh, and in 2006, Disney got Oswald back. They really learned their lesson with reading those contracts. By scouring those contracts and finding Marvel IP that is both popularized in the current Marvel Cinematic Universe but not portrayed in Universal Orlando's theme parks, Disney's able to bring one of their biggest franchises to both coasts. So there you have it. Not all failures are completely terrible. Disney has been incredibly innovative when turning the bad into something good and rising from those ashes. Without these seemingly catastrophic failures, we wouldn't have had some of the most innovative rides or even Mickey Mouse. So I made light of saying earlier that failures are just opportunities to learn, or maybe even opportunities to do better next time, but it's completely true. So if there's a situation that you're dealing with right now that feels like a giant failure, let's be honest, we've all had those, or maybe we're going through them right now. This is your chance to learn what you can, turn things around, and start over with a whole lot more knowledge than you had before. I know you can do it, I know I can do it, I know we can all do it. So thanks for listening, you guys. Thanks for watching. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.